Chapter 13 Improvements to the Army. Wow, it looks cool. I've never been here before, Passios exclaimed when he walked into a room full of soldiers sitting on chairs, facing forward. It's a meeting room used for occasions like this, Thomas answered Passios' potential question. There are no empty chairs here, so go sit over there next to Ephraim. Seth pointed at Ephraim, who was sitting in another section at the right part of the room. When Apasio sat down, the last of the soldiers made their way into the room and found their respective areas to sit. Officer Kai and his group came to sit next to Apasios, and by that, everyone was present. So Commander Kairos stood up from his chair to speak in the front. Folks, I brought you all here today to have a meeting which was long overdue. Therefore, we'll talk about the matters of importance right here. You know the steps our recorder will write, and the evaluator is going to assist him as we go. Engineers will aid us in some of the special topics, and Commander Cairo spoke, but he stopped because a soldier raised his hand. How long would this take? He was a brave soldier who had the guts to ask such a question in an annoying way. Soon his buddies around him began muttering out their disapproval at his interruption, and started poking at his sides to just let it go. However, the more his buddies talked him down, the more he persisted with his question. Therefore, Commander Kairos decided to reply. Just let me finish, soldier. This will take however long you guys make it take, from a short while to much longer if you make it so. I noticed that for a period of time we had lots of improvements in our group. But in the past year, I suppose that we have gotten rather slow on further advancements or not at all. Also, we have gotten lazy as well, not forgetting that we didn't have any meetings for several months, which only led to our procrastination and much scolding from Lord Pericles and even other platoons. Just because we don't get involved in the thick of the battles in comparison to melee infantries, it doesn't mean that we get to lag off from other guys. That's why we're here to speak on that matter first before touching anything else. Does anyone have a question about that? Commander Kairos calmly looked around at the room. The soldiers started shifting uncomfortably in their seats by now, and they were looking at each other to see how others were thinking about this meeting. It was a rebuke coming from their own commander, who rarely gave any rebukes, which meant that whatever he said was very serious. Soon, a soldier raised his hand to speak. Aren't we great already, though? Do we really need to go through this meeting? He looked very confused. It seemed like some other soldiers were agreeing with that soldier. Capacius could hear others around him murmur out their approvals and agreements. After a while, Commander Kairos started speaking again. Are we? If we were great, then why did we struggle much in defeating those small lines of militias when we were pushing towards the town square? Other guys had more militias to take care of. You saw those lumps of men on that street, right? You do realize our inability to kill them fast enough cost other platoons some of their men. Also, Commander Kairos couldn't go far with his talk. Wait, what does that have to matter with making other platoons lose their men? Another soldier said. Commander Kairos sighed deeply. You don't get it, do you? The remaining ones who are still alive, facing against us, turned around to throw their spears to the melee soldiers who were clumped up in the town square, and many of those spears killed them. Hold on, isn't that the fault of crossbowmen and gunners then? They were tasked with hand-to-hand combat. Still yet another soldier spoke, an apparent archer he was by his accusation. Immediately the archers started chuckling and agreeing with the soldier who had made a bold and intelligent response to be out of such blame. When the noise began subsiding in the hall, Commander Kairos tapped on the ground with his foot to regain the attention. Soldier, who are we? Commander Kairos stared at the soldier who had made a bold statement. It was apparent that the commander was losing his patience. The soldier couldn't say anything. Soldier, we are a team. So let's not go on blaming someone else. We all made mistakes out there, and we all need to help each other in improving ourselves. Those guys struggled. Yeah, I saw that. But did we, as archers, really do great to thin out the enemy troops for our struggling comrades. I doubt, for I saw many of you archers missing your marks many times, not to mention staying back while crossbowmen did all kinds of things to kill off the enemies. Commander Kairos paused for a while to clear his throat. Many of them were partaking in intense melee fighting for the first time. He paused for a while and got ready to speak louder. So, couldn't you have done the least to notice their agony? How much they were trying for all of us? Even though we are veterans, much seasoned soldiers compared to them, did we try more than them? We all could have climbed up the houses to shoot our arrows while they fought. His voice thundered across the big meeting room. After that, he lowered his voice so as to wrap things up softly. Also, what's the point of boasting how many arrows you can shoot in a given time during practice when you fail to kill them as fast in an actual fight? I'm not blaming you. Don't take it personally. I'm at the fault of this too due to my poor leadership. So now, listen carefully as I get captains out here to talk about what they think we are lacking. Understood? There was a sudden change of mood in the room. What used to be full of confusion, with soldiers getting annoyed and bored from participating, turned more into cooperation and understanding. Pausius was struck in awe at Commander Kairos' ability in achieving such a feat. He then looked around and saw that many soldiers were nodding and had expressions which showed that they understood their situation and would like to contribute in improving themselves. So, captains, could you please come out and sit along here in these front seats? Commander Kairos asked. Pausius saw Thomas standing from his seat to walk towards the front seats. There were three other captains who stood up, and they all made their way to the seats. When they all took their seats, Commander Kairos started speaking. Captain Claus, what do you have for us today? Come stand here, please. When Captain Claus walked up, soldiers started clapping so that he could feel welcome to be up there. And with that, Commander Kairos went to sit next to the recorder at the front right corner of the room. Upon seeing Commander Kairos walking away to sit down, Captain Claus started speaking after clearing his throat. First of all, thanks for having me here, and I would like to touch upon the fact that we crossbowmen need smaller crossbows for easier mobility. What's the point of having big crossbows when almost all the enemies we are facing are peasant troops? I bet smaller ones would do as much job or a better job than the big ones. That's because they would surely help us move better, and let us easily put them to our sides before getting the shields from our backs. Hold on, I'm not calling for a removing of all the crossbows that we have right now. They're really great, I definitely agree. But I believe there are different uses for different types of crossbows. Therefore, I ask for some money from the treasury to aid us in acquiring smaller crossbows, which we would switch around depending on the battle types. The soldiers dully clapped to Captain Claw's speech, so he muttered out his thanks and waited for Commander Kairos to speak. Who thinks that's a great idea? Commander Kairos sought his fellow soldiers' opinions. Soldiers started grumbling a bit, due to someone asking for free money to pay for their equipment. Therefore, Captain Claus stood there confused and insecure, and he was hoping for a change of situation. After a while, Ephraim raised his hand to speak. You know, Officer Kai and Seth have been complaining about handling their crossbows. So I guess that it's not a notion that Captain Claus fabricated for himself. Also, the gunners have been provided with the guns by Lord Pericles himself when he had the purchasing frenzy. Of course, they paid them back over the course of time. Therefore, wouldn't it be reasonable to give crossbowmen partial coverage for their purchase of new weapons? As if assessing their current situation and weighing the pros and cons, everyone became silent. Soon after, Commander Kairos decided to break the silence. Archers, what do you guys think about this? Crossbowman Captain brought out his opinion regarding the weapons, and the gunner's officer agreed to his request. So that leaves you guys. There came an uncomfortable feeling into the room, and the soldiers started shifting uneasily in their seats again. The archer captains started glancing at their groupmates, trying to guess what their soldiers wanted. A long time later, not willing to start a heated debate, the archers nodded at their captains to show their approval. With that, one of their captains sighed in relief. For the good of the platoon as a whole, we agreed to Captain Claw's request for partial coverage for the new weapons. Thank you all for agreeing to my request. You all have my gratitude, Captain Claw said. The uncomfortable atmosphere slowly settled down. Captain Claus, I appreciate your thoughts regarding your own men and how their crossbows were hindering them. Due to unanimous agreement of all major groups in this room, we have written down your plea into our papers, and will give some thought to it, and I personally agree with you. So I'll get back to you with that when Lord Pericles and the rest of the executives return from their tasks in Constantinopolis. Commander Kairos slowly looked around at the soldiers. Who's next? Captain Niles, would you like to go? When Captain Claus walked back towards his seat, Captain Niles stood up to deliver his own speech. The two captains exchanged a simple nod with each other as they went their ways. Again, the soldiers clapped Captain Niles to welcome him. Soon after, everyone got quiet again, and they looked at Captain Niles to hear what he had to say. Thank you, everyone. I want to start by saying that we are short on manpower amongst the archers, and I hope to see an increase in gunners as well. During that battle, I noticed that our front line was rather shaky, which means if the enemy was even a bit stronger, then that front would have crumbled. I also noticed that they were having a hard time later on in the battle at the town square and at the tactical retreat part. Those could have been easily solved if we just had more gunners to act as our front line. Therefore, I request that we recruit more men to aid us more in battles. Regardless of how genuine he was, the soldiers weren't very cooperative regarding his ideas. They started grunting and grumbling about increased spending in their group, and even other archers complained about further chaos due to the increase in soldiers. Captain Niles, we feel like we shouldn't recruit more people for a long while. Didn't we already fill up the gaps in our groups? If you're worrying about the front line not doing its job, then we could get them trained harder. One archer said, Yeah, we remember what happened when our treasury almost became empty. Lord Pericles upped the price for basically all the goods sold at the armory. He upped the tax on the island too, and people got angry, a crossbowman said. Captain Niles was just at the wrong place at the wrong time to suggest the wrong thing, so Commander Kairos decided to call it quits. Captain Niles, it seems that we don't have a unanimous agreement with your suggestion. As much as how I support you and like your genuineness in declaring what's needed for us, I don't think it's time for us to increase our number anytime soon. Anyways, thanks for your consideration. Commander Kairos started clapping so that Captain Niles wouldn't be in too deep of shame. The soldiers clapped too, and Captain Niles made his way back to his seat. Interesting. It's usually Captain Claus who makes weird and hard suggestions. Officer Kai, who was sitting next to Apacius, muttered to himself. Captain George, I guess you're up next, Commander Kairos said. The soldiers clapped as Captain George made his way to the front and turned around to face the soldiers. Hello, folks. I feel honored to be standing here. With that, I would like to suggest on behalf of my fellow archers. I know that we've only been wearing leather vests as our armor. Some of us have no armor, and most of us only have a small wooden buckler as our defense. I feel that those are just too outdated, so I humbly ask for all of us to be reinforced with chainmail and shields that are bigger than the bucklers. Captain George calmly stated his suggestion. There was a bit of confusion regarding this issue. Soldiers became uneasy again and started shifting in their seats. Suddenly, one soldier quickly raised his hand to speak. Commander Kairos, are we ready for armored archers? We have agreed in the beginning that we would receive the easiest physical training in return for us not wearing much armor. I'll state my response at the end, soldier. You guys have the floor right now. Commander Kairos calmly looked at the soldiers. Therefore, the soldier stated his question back to everyone else in the room. Thus, his statement brought out more responses. It's much cheaper than increasing our number. Why do they even need armor? They stay in the back at all times. Will they help us during hand-to-hand combat then? Well, who knows? Seems like they're going to man up for once. There were many more statements other than those above, and they were similar to those four. However, Captain George was able to hear the last one much better than any others. Therefore, his will to push with his ideas increased drastically. Yes, we are going to man up for once. From time to time, I talked about this topic with my fellow archers. They told me they would think about it, and some even agreed with me. If there are those who aren't going to man up, then let them continue wearing leather vests and carry around small shields and weapons. However, for those of us who want to contribute more than how much we are currently giving, let us be granted something more than what we have at this moment, Captain George said. The soldiers now had a clearer understanding regarding the issue, and they started to mutter out their approvals. Yeah, we crossbowmen get our wishes granted, so it's only fair that archers get their wishes granted as well. I wonder who's going to man up and who won't. Supposing that they go by their groups, will all of Captain George's group man up? Who cares? Let's just get this over with. The soldiers were talking amongst themselves and they all had different thoughts. When the talk started to subside, Commander Kairos found the right time to speak. Captain George, I do agree with you that it's time for us archers to have different ranks amongst us. However, I wouldn't know for sure if the groups will stay intact if we're going to do this. It's because I would want the armored archers to be managed by one of you, while the other will manage the regular archers. So, Captain Niles, it seems Captain George wants to be armored himself. What do you want to be? Captain Niles looked at Captain George for a short moment. It depends, Commander. If most of my members want to be armored, then I'll be armored. But if they don't want to, then I won't. I don't mind too much either way. Commander Kairos turned to face the soldiers. Okay, so, archer officers, who wants to be armored and who doesn't? After a while of talking to each other, the officers stated they will stick with their current captains. Great! Thank you guys, it makes things so much easier for us. You do know that I'm with Captain George and he wants to be an armored archer. And so am I. However, I believe that we need more time to thoroughly discuss this issue amongst ourselves. So, this will be our assignment for a while. When do you think we should meet for this? Commander Cairo said. The archers started speaking amongst themselves. When some time passed, one of the officers raised his hand. Tomorrow night, around the campfire. That's perfect. I like your idea. Commander Kairos turned to look at Captain George. Captain George, I really appreciate that you came up with this suggestion. It would help us very much in the long run. Thus, Captain George walked back to his seat, with a clap of approval from the soldiers, and it was Thomas' turn to speak. Captain Thomas, your turn next, Commander Kairos said. The soldiers clapped for Thomas. Some of them started shouting out their approval even before he made his way to the front. So it seemed to Apacios that Thomas received the most respect from other soldiers and all the other captains in this platoon. Many thanks, you guys. I appreciate your support. To remind you, I'm the leader of a mixed-up group. I'm a melee infantry. One of my officers is a gunner, and the other is a crossbowman. So we're bound to have different kinds of issues. But first of all, I would like to see this island's population increase in number. Bring over the unemployed and homeless, of whom there are plenty in Constantinopolis, and settle them here. Give them jobs such as increasing the number of fishermen, rebuilding that crumbling watchtower on the tip of the peninsula, farming, and especially that mining complex in Helki Island. Initial investment will be quite a sum, but tax revenue over the course of the following years will surely help pile up greater reserves in our treasury. Thomas quickly noticed that soldiers were becoming confused since he was going off topic. I'm saying this because lack of extra reserves of money in the fortress definitely means that all of our previous requests will be ignored by the executives because we get the least attention here, and the last to be receiving monetary benefits. Therefore, Commander Karos, please talk about this issue in the headquarters. We really need to improve this island for the good of our platoon. On the other hand, Thomas couldn't go any further because he was showered with claps from the soldiers. They completely approved his suggestion, and with that, Commander Cairo smiled and chuckled. Yeah, I get you. I'll make sure that other executives hear this. And then, one of my soldiers came up with this news. He's one of the gunners and he claims he found out that Turks are working on this new type of gun which helps the user very much by letting him use both hands to hold the gun, aim, and shoot. The thing is that the technology is either already in Edirne, capital of the Osman Turks, or is in making in Edirne. He's not too sure about it. I believe that obtaining such technology will make the gunners gain the respect that they deserve and will help them a lot in reloading and killing the enemies, thus helping out all of us in return. So I ask that you allow us to work with the engineers to reverse engineer the technology if we get to obtain them. And we need the spy to steal the technology if we have to, Thomas said. Most soldiers didn't really understand this suggestion, so they simply shrugged and let the situation flow through as it had been. However, Commander Cairo said otherwise regarding this issue. Captain Thomas, I already know about that, and you guys will have a chance to discuss it with the executives. However, you do know that the engineers are always in demand in our fortress, and they have much work to do as of this moment. Our spy, you can work with him to steal the technology, buy it, or whatever you feel like doing. However, reverse engineering would take time and your demands right now seems to not quite match with the flow. I understand your enthusiasm and care for your members that you speak nothing of your own wishes, but it's not the time yet. Thanks for your consideration, Commander Kairos. Well now, that's it for me. Thomas spoke and he proceeded to go back to his seat. Soldiers immediately clapped at Thomas. It was the most peaceful speech made by a captain, and nobody had any bad feelings this time. When the clapping ended, Commander Kairos came back up to the front to speak. Wow, you all amazed me in this meeting. It was very worth it, and I learned a lot from this. Everything had been written down, so just to go over, Captain Claus, you must find out the crossbows to buy because there are no small ones in this armory. Only then, we executives may agree to your demands. Captain George, in the future, we'll make sure to talk about changing some of the archer rings. And Captain Thomas, we'll try to get more people to settle in this island. Does anyone have a question on to that? Nobody had any questions, so they were looking around to see if anyone else had any. Therefore, Commander Kairos resumed speaking. Well then, I have some tasks for you. Captain Thomas, you and your group members are in charge of continuing on the southern road by cutting trees towards the large boulders in the southwest, which will be our future stone quarry. The southern road should be wide enough for 5 wagons to be traveling at the same time without being at the risk of bumping into each other. For the trees, you need to cut them down to rightful size to be stored in the resource building. Captain Niles and Captain George, we are in charge of cleaning all the military areas so that the place will be welcoming for our comrades. When we're done, we need to collect taxes on all the Prince's Islands. Captain Claus, you and your group members are in charge of cleaning up the livestock areas and feeding them. And when you are done, you need to help Captain Thomas' group. Also, Lord Pericles said that he'll come back 6 days later, so I'll give us a couple of days to finish them up. Other than that, you all know your basic tasks. And I'll call this meeting to an end. The soldiers started clapping. The soldiers started stretching or getting up from their seats to leave the room. Pasius tapped on Officer Kai's shoulder. Officer Kai, we had livestock areas? Yeah, you didn't know? Officer Kai stared at Pasios in disbelief. Pasios shrugged. Well, I've seen horses and would hear faint rooster cries in the mornings, but didn't care much about them. Officer Kai laughed. Yes, we have horses, chickens, hogs, and cattle. Where are they located? Pasios said. Horses are next to the headquarters because most of them are for the executives. So, I don't know why they didn't ride them during the last raid. Anyways, chickens and hogs are by the northeastern corner because they smell the most, and that's the region of this fortress with fewest necessary visits. The cattle are by the southeastern corner, also because of the smell, and they need to be sent out to roam around in the southern fields. Oh, thanks. I want to see them soon, Pasio said. We won't be seeing them anytime soon. Let's get going. Captain Thomas is leaving right now. Officer Kai stood up to leave. Apacios followed him out. When they got out, Thomas was waiting for them outside with four other soldiers. It seemed like he was waiting for Apacios, so he walked up to him. Hi, Thomas. You did great there, Apacios said. Thomas smiled. Ah, thanks. It was nothing special, though. Anyways, these guys are other crossbowmen in our group. You know that Ephraim once told you that I oversee a total of 11 other people? So they are the last four. From your left to right, they are Gibson, Vincent, Gilroy, and Magnus. Passius greeted the four men. As he was greeting them, Ephraim and Seth came along beside him. Hey Thomas, do you want to get something to eat now? Ephraim said. Yeah, I was just about to ask that. All of us are here, so let's set off for the harbor and go eat at anywhere that's open for us, Thomas said. Ephraim then exchanged greetings with the crossbowmen, and they all resumed walking for the harbor. Soon they arrived at the shops. Alright, so I feel like yeah, there's a lot more, so I'm going to just stop you here. Oh man. Yeah, it was a long haul, so thank you for listening, and I'll continue with the next video.